The following program is seen statewide on California Public Television. Hello, everybody. I'm Huell Howser, and here we are on the side of Highway 299, about 4 miles west of Redding, California, in Shasta County. Now, you know, when you're traveling around our state and you're whizzing down the highway and you look over and see things, many times there's more to them than initially meets the eye. For example, right over here, look at these buildings. They're kind of old and falling down. A lot of them have already fallen down. Doesn't look very interesting, does it? But if you get out and look around and investigate just a little bit, you'll discover that those old buildings over there are very much a part of California's rich history, and they are still very much alive. And if you're curious what in the world we're talking about, you're invited to spend the day with us in one of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall.
Well, this is going to be very interesting. I'm standing here with Linda Cooper, and Linda, explain to everybody exactly where we are and why this place is so important to California history.
Well, you're standing in Shasta, which is now Shasta State Historic Park, and this was the most northern gold strike in California. After the discovery at Marshall's Gold, this was the place to be. And the reason why is because all the wagon roads ended here. If you wanted to take your bath here, if you needed to shop here, buy your gold pans here, you shopped here. This is where the wagon trains stopped.
There was a lot of activity here. Not as much activity as there is today. This is a very busy highway. Lots of trucks and cars and tourists and people coming by. But this was a pretty bustling place back then too, wasn't it?
Very bustling. I mean, this is where the county seat was. This is where you came to get married. This is where you were put in jail. This is where, like I said, you shopped, you bought your baked goods right here, yes.
This was kind of like a shopping center for miners, right?
Yeah, as we tell the school children, this was the shopping mall for the miners.
All right, now what have we got here? We've got a hardware store, Bull Baker Company hardware store. Now, are these all original buildings? Are we looking at the original building right here?
Yes, yes we are. And you know, our visitors ask us, why the iron doors?
Why the iron doors?
Okay, big fire here in Shasta. They were originally wooden buildings in, you know, like early 1850s. After the fire, the city decided to build with brick and the iron doors so that the buildings wouldn't burn down.
And that's why at least the shell of the buildings are still here.
Yes.
Now, what are we looking at here? Here's the drugstore. That would have been an important place. Here is here's dry goods over here. So this would have really been, can we walk in over here? Let's go in the dry goods store.
Thank you.
This would have been a very busy place right here.
Absolutely, absolutely. In a little bit, you'll see a real dry goods store down the street that has still been in operation since the 1850s.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So there's more here than just these empty shells.
That's right. These serve as a reminder. They get photographed a lot just because architecturally they look wonderful now, but they serve as a reminder, the remnants of the gold rush period in California history.
Now, Linda, would these have been where the houses would have been, right in here?
Actually, these would have been still businesses in this area. The houses were built behind their businesses. So what a short commute to be able to come down to your house and just walk down some stairs right into your business.
And I'm looking over your shoulder. What is this built in the side of the hill here?
This is a refrigerator, Huell, just to use today terms. This was a meat locker for the butcher shop, so another remnant, another reminder of Shasta in her heydays. And they would bring ice down from a mountain at Whiskey Town. And they would keep big blocks of ice here, and it would keep the meat cool. In some homes in Shasta today, they still have these built into their homes.
Wow, look at this.
This was a real necessity without refrigeration.
And this would have been stacked with meat iced down from ice from up on the mountain.
That's right.
Well, they were practical, and they had to be, didn't they?
Well, they did. You're absolutely right.
Now, what about the miners? Weren't they living in tents? They weren't living in buildings, were they?
Good call. The first miners had to live in tents, lean-tos, you name it. And then they realized it was serious business up here, $100,000 worth of gold going out a week, so then they decided to dig roots.
Ah, and they stayed here.
And they stayed here, and they needed the supplies here, which is why they built the town.
Well, now, I've seen old pictures. This was a thriving town, and it was thriving back in the 50s, 60s, 70s.
Yes, the 50s and 60s were really the heyday of Shasta.
How many people would have lived here?
Oh, there was at least like 25,000 people here.
You're
and
kidding.
We're talking about the 1850s and the 1860s.
25,000 people.
Yes. And that is another reason why this served as a Shasta County seat up until 1888. This was a seat of government right here for Shasta County for 30 years.
This was the big town.
This was the town.
Continuing our walking tour, Linda, now we've come upon a building that looks like there's still something going on inside.
You're absolutely right. This building has been in continuous use since 1856 here in Shasta.
Now, the sign here says this is the, how do you pronounce this?
That's Litsch store.
The Litsch store. Are you Mr. Litsch?
Well, I act as Mr. Litsch, right?
And what would have been going on in here, Mr. Litsch?
Well, at that time, it started out 1856 as a grocery store. And then later on, Frank Litsch bought the store in 1873, and he actually started turning into a general merchandise store. And so actually it was more like a one-stop shopping going into, if you compare today's Walmart, you can almost, going back, you know, in that time, 1880s, like a Walmart of that time.
Well, let's go inside and take a look. I got my credit card. Do you take credit cards?
Well, if you're a trustworthy individual and you're honest, we'll extend credit to you.
Now, this is amazing. This is the way the store would have looked in the 1880s. Now, this would have been way too sophisticated for those early miners back in the 1850s.
Well, probably so, but still in 1850, they started building actually a number of general merchandise stores, especially in the town of Shasta, because it was more like a port city at that time. All the supplies, everything had to be purchased there. So there were, again, I agree though, probably in the 1880s, this was probably a little bit more sophisticated from the original.
This really has a little bit of everything. Now, how have you stocked your shelves? What have you decided to have here? What have you decided to put up on the shelf?
Well, actually, they decided when actually the state of California acquired it in 1960 from the Litsch family, about a third of the items are already here, the inventory. In fact, they had a majority next door in storage, and in the back they had a small pioneer museum set up. So towards the end, about 1960 when they closed, they sort of have a museum type setup. When the state came in, they actually removed everything from the modern times and replaced it with the original from the 1880s.
So some of this is original merchandise from this store.
Absolutely.
Show us something that would have actually been here.
Here's something interesting. You see all the shoes? Now, as you go up, they look brand new as far as the soles, but they're over 100 years old. They were all packed away, and you see the boxes down here in the shoe boxes.
So these are the original shoe boxes down here.
Yeah, they were actually packed away next door.
And what about these old hats?
Now, these are replicas, but in the first case in front as we go out, you can see are the original. These are replicas of that time.
Now, these would have been miners' hats.
Miners' hats, right, and casual hats. Some were for evening wear.
And look over here, you've got dishes.
Dishes, right. You know, this town was very sophisticated during the 1800s, too. You had to find some of the finest wines, some of the finest meals, and everything was served right in this area.
And you also had spittoons.
The famous spittoons, right. As you can see, we have quite a tobacco section up there, and then most of the men did chew tobacco. At that time, actually, they would go in the back of the store. The back of the store was for the men only. Women really didn't go back there, so the men could be back there chewing tobacco and spitting into the spittoon, playing cards, telling stories, and things like that.
Wow.
So the women stayed away from that area.
Was this the town gathering place? I'm going to put this
Yes,
spittoon
yes,
back
it was.
down. I don't think I want. You can't actually purchase anything here.
No, you
can
can't.
Just
No,
look at it.
right.
Would this have been the town gathering place?
It would have been, right. And as I think you'll be visiting the bakery shortly, it was also a town gathering place.
Because I'm just looking at all of this stuff. These are your scales where you would have, what? Well, look over here. Beans, peas, lima beans. What is that?
That's rice. Rice.
Rice and coffee.
Coffee.
So they would have had everything here. Now these look like old containers.
They
up
are.
here.
They are the original containers from the 1880s. Now some are replicas, though, good replicas.
Can we go back there and take a look at those? Because this is really piquing my interest back here. Look at this old.
medicines we have here too. Oh, this is medicines.
And this would have been
That's baking
Baking
powder,
powder.
right?
mustard. And what about all these bottles?
Oh,
over
interesting. You have some. Here is very famous for the children. This was, in fact, let me go to the next bottle here. Then the next shelf there, we can take a look. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Right
there you
here.
are. Yeah, now this actually was root beer. This
Root beer?
This would make 5 gallons of root beer. Take this, water, and some yeast, give that bubbly effect, and you have 5 gallons of root beer from a small container like
Now
that.
this isn't the original.
That's the original.
Wonder
Yeah.
what that would taste like today.
Good root beer.
You
Aged
think
root
it would
beer.
aged?
Aged. A
And
lot of
this
this stuff is vanilla and different extracts.
Boy, stomach.
That was a cure-all. If you had a stomach ache, that's what you take. That was actually alcohol, food coloring, and flavoring.
So were people taking it for stomach ailments or because they wanted to drink a little bit of alcohol?
And Colonel Hofstadter made a fortune off of this. When he died, he was worth about $18 million.
From selling this kind of stuff.
That's right.
Snake oil salesman.
Snake oil. Yeah, these are Levi jeans. In fact, the Litsch store was one of the first in the Northern California to sell Levi jeans. This is a copy now of the very first patented pair in 1873. In fact, you know, his first year, he sold over 21,000 for $2 a set. That was the jacket and the pant
Wow.
in 1873.
So
Yeah.
this store was selling a lot of Levi
Right,
jeans.
right. Work pants for the miners, the
And
farmers.
these are kind of collector's items themselves
absolutely,
today.
absolutely.
Wow, there's so much to see when you come in here, and everything here has a story connected with it.
Absolutely. And in fact, each item, as we have many school children that come during the week for regular tours, and I explain what you see is also you can tell how the people lived back then. You know, it was interesting just see how they were able to function without all the modern conveniences that we have today.
Yeah.
One of the big things I always bring up, think of no electricity. So as you go through the store, there's nothing here that's connected with electricity or with automobiles, horse and buggies and things like that.
Well, this has certainly been an education. Thank you
Well,
very,
thank
very
you.
much. There is so much to see in here. I'm just looking up at your ceiling.
Oh, yes.
There
yeah,
was
yeah.
as much hanging from the ceiling as there
Absolutely,
was
yeah.
on the shelf.
They try to utilize all the space. In fact, most general merchandise across the United States were sort of long, narrow, and high ceilings, mainly for that purpose, for displaying.
Boy, we could spend the whole day in your store. Thank you
Well, please
very,
come back.
very
Thank you.
much. But there's more to see, and I'm kind of hungry, Linda. Do you know where I could go get some fresh baked goods?
Absolutely, right next door. Come meet Henry Bloom's Bakery.
Yeah, 'cause this is the bakery right here.
That's right. He was quite industrious. This was Henry Bloom's Bakery.
Henry Bloom.
Henry
He was
Bloom.
one of the local business people.
Yes, he was. He was. He built this bakery in 1878, and he operated it until 1918 here in Shasta. A lot of our visitors wonder, what is beer doing in a bakery? They ask.
Wait a minute, here's a keg of beer.
That's right. 2 reasons. One, the brewery that's down the street, they needed the yeast for the beer down the street. Henry Bloom needed the yeast for baking here in the bakery. More importantly, if you were a woman here in Shasta in 1878, You didn't go into a bar, but you could come in here and sit down and have a glass of beer.
So there would have been women sitting in here drinking beer.
That's right. We have first-hand accounts. He had 4 stools set up here, and women could come and they could like have a glass of beer.
Now there's the name Litsch on here from the store right next door. So Mr. Litsch was involved in a little bit of everything, wasn't he?
He definitely was, yes.
All right, now I don't see anything on the shelf here to buy, but I see a lady through the wall here, back here in the back, who looks to me like she's baking something up.
She certainly is. This is Kristen Keller, who's our senior park aide here at the park.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, I've got sticky hands.
Now, how did you get hoodwinked into baking? Is this part of what the living history part of coming to visit this park?
Yes, indeed. People come here, they see the word bakery on the sign, and they want something to eat. And of course, we want to show them how the oven was used and sort of things that might have been made at that time.
Now, this to me looks like a pretzel.
It is a pretzel.
Would they have been making pretzels back then?
These were German bakers, and they made a lot of rolls and breads, and pretzels would have been something you could have come to the bakery to have.
And they could have had pretzels with their beer. Okay, I'm getting the picture now. And was this the way the oven would have operated?
Correct. This is called a peel oven, and it's called that because they use these long peels.
Can you put something in the oven for us and just kind of show us how it would have operated?
Well, I would have loved to do that, but I never apprenticed to a baker, so I don't exactly know how it works.
So, well, how did you make this bread?
Well, I'm making it a little differently than they would have in 1880.
I gotcha.
What you're seeing here with the fire in the oven, that would have been what the oven looked like about 8 hours before they were ready to bake.
Mm-hmm.
They would build the fire and let it burn overnight and heat the brick. Then they'd scrape all the remains of the fire out in the ashes and then bake from the radiant heat of the brick.
Wow.
And, you know, we'd like to do that. We just don't quite have that time.
So it was a lot more time consuming to bake back then than it is today.
Certainly, and that's why they'd make 150 loaves of bread at once in this oven.
Really?
Yeah.
So this supplied the whole town right here.
Yes, this was the town's kitchen as far as bread was concerned.
In bread, in pretzels, and in beer. Okay, we have left the Bloom Bakery and we've come 2 doors down. This looks like another store.
Yes, it is. It's the sales area for the park, and we're operated by the Town of Shasta Interpretive Association.
So what do you all do? You sell stuff in here for
Yes,
what
we
reason?
do. So we can earn some money and have buy the state park things they need or
So you're like a support group
Yes,
for the
we
state
are.
park.
Yes, we are.
And this is like a little general store that actually sells stuff, because you can't buy anything next door in the Litsch store.
Can't buy anything at the museum, but we try to get items that are similar to what's in the museum.
I gotta tell you, have you ever tried any of these pretzels?
I did have one, and they're very good.
These are great pretzels. You don't sell beer in here, do you, to go along with the pretzels?
Sorry, no beer.
You know, this is one of the widest highways in California, too, just because of that fire I was talking about. When they had that fire early on with those wood structures, they decided to make the highway really wide so that if a fire started on one side of the street, it wouldn't jump and go to the other side.
Isn't that interesting? Things like that, little bits of information that you wouldn't know if you hadn't studied your history.
That's right. Another thing the Shastinians, as I sometimes call them, prided themselves on is that this was the longest row of brick buildings north of San Francisco.
Really?
And they competed with San Francisco. They sold Shakespeare here. They had champagne and oysters at the Empire Hotel. So, yeah, these buildings were well known north of San Francisco.
Did I see something where this was called the Queen City?
That's right, the Queen City of the North.
We're crossing the street because there's something over here Linda wanted to show us that is, well, this is not actually part of the park, is it?
No, we're not actually, but we've been here since long before the park.
All right, your name is?
I'm Bud Shuffleton.
And what are we standing in front of here?
We're standing in front of the Hall of Western Star. It's the oldest Masonic lodge in California.
The oldest Masonic hall, and I see the sign says erected in 1853, so when people came here for the gold rush, they had to have a bakery, they had to have an assay office, they had to have a general store, and they also had to have a Masonic lodge?
A social and fraternal place as well. And the Masonic Lodge was usually the center, or one of the focal points of any city of any size, or a mining camp as well.
So this is a very historic place.
Exactly.
Do people think this is part of the park when they're here?
Usually, because we are in the middle, basically, of the park itself. But we are an island unto ourselves, still privately owned and maintained.
Well, you still operate out of here. You still have lodge meetings?
We meet here at least once a month for our business meeting, and we're usually doing something probably every week. We have some kind of activity going on,
and
either with the community or within ourselves.
And how do you feel about your location? Because this has got to like take you back in time and make you think about what those old Masons would have been doing here in 1853 when this was a gold rush town.
That's kind of our attitude. We've maintained our building in that period, and occasionally we dress in period costumes to go along with activities in the park itself. And we really are proud of our building and where we are in the community.
Well, our Masonic adventure continues, because as we were leaving, Bud, you invited us to come inside. For what reason?
Basically to see our lodge room as it would have been in 1854.
So this is pretty much exactly the way it was in 1854?
Minus some of the really heavy Victorian wallpapering and things like that, but basically the furniture is all original. Our original wood stove sits where it did in 1854.
So wait a minute, this is where they would have all gathered around the stove, because it got cold up here in the wintertime.
The first guys here at the meeting built the fire, and they all got to sit there. Everybody else sat over here and got cold.
And how do you know this is exactly the way it looked?
We have pictures in the late 1870s, and virtually everything is intact. The station chairs, the side chairs, everybody is still very, very much original. Of course, we have changed the lights to electrified
yeah, but
kerosene.
These would have been the kind of, I mean, they would have been the kind of fixtures they would have had.
We researched for months to try to find something very similar to what we had.
And what do you think those guys would have been talking about when they were sitting around in here? Would they have been talking about their lives and what was going on in California at that time?
What they knew of it, because we were here before the state was California, and they would have been talking about what was happening with the new state government and what was going on in the community, who's getting the gold, where it's being found, things like that. But they never discussed politics. We don't do that. That's left outside.
If the walls of this room could
talk, there would be stories.
Okay, we are now in the old courthouse, which is part of the park. And Linda, this didn't start as a courthouse, did it?
No, it was originally 3 offices, like a newspaper office functioned out of this building, but then the town was growing so fast they needed a county seat of government. So they evicted the tenants and turned this into the courthouse from 1862. Functioned as one, the county seat, until 1888 when the seat was moved to Reading.
All right, now inside the old courthouse is the old courtroom. And this is amazing that you all have restored it like this. It's kind of echoey in here. What all went on inside this place?
This is where people were married. This is where they conducted their business for their real estate transactions. And this is where people were tried and sent to jail. Justice was literally swift. The jail's right down below us.
Okay, we've come downstairs, and you're right, Linda. This jail was right literally underneath the courtroom.
That's right. 13 unlucky stairs down to the jail.
All right, so you were found guilty upstairs.
That's right.
You came downstairs, and that's got to be the jail in here.
That's right. Sometimes when I've had to answer the alarm at night, boy, those county sheriffs love this jail. They say they ought to build them this way.
Really? Can we go in?
Well, for you, yes.
Boy, oh boy, now this was a jail, wasn't it?
Feel how heavy this door is.
Whoa.
Isn't that amazing?
Oh my gosh. Wait a minute, what is this?
They would have strapped that around your waist if you were a very dangerous criminal, and to make sure that you couldn't escape, double security for them.
These would have been your leg ankle irons.
That's right.
And this is literally a ball and chain.
That's right.
Oh my gosh. And this is original.
This is original, yes.
And here's the little cot. You got a game of cards going on over here. It would have had to been solitaire because there's only one person to a cell, right?
That's right. For 25 cents, they'd give you a deck of cards. The meals were free, though. They brought in the meals from the Empire Hotel next door. And, but you'd have to pay for your chewing tobacco or your cigar or something like that.
Let's close this door and see what it would be like to be inside this thing. Boy, when it closes, it closes.
You're in here pretty tight, yes. Yes.
Well, this has certainly been a lot of fun, Linda. Thank you so much. Now, how many thousand people come through here and visit this park every year?
We have 50,000 visitors a year, but part of those visitors are school groups. We see 100 children a day throughout the school year, about 4 months a year.
They must love the general store, the bakery, the jail downstairs, the courthouse. They must, I mean, this is California history at its best.
I call this State Park's best kept secret. People stop, they visit, they just can't believe the depth, what they see beyond just the ruins, as you said, in the road.
Well, that's the way we're back where we started the program, right out here on the side of Highway 299, and literally when you drive by and look over and just see those old fallen down old brick buildings over there, you would never know.
You'd never guess. People are always pleasantly surprised.
Well, we have been very pleasantly surprised. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
The old town of Shasta, it was called the Queen City. This is where it all happened, right here, back during the gold rush.
Right, the Queen City of the North.
This was a bustling place, and it is still a wonderful, wonderful example of California's golden parks.
I love you, California. You're the greatest state of all. I love you in the winter, summer, spring, and in the fall. I love your fertile valleys, your dear mountains I adore. I love your grand old oceans, and I love a rugged shore.
If you enjoyed our visit to Shasta State Historic Park near Redding and would like to see it again or share it with your family and friends, it's available on video cassette. All you have to do is call 1-800-266-5727 and we'll be glad to send it to you right away.